Welcome to the Folk School on Willow Creek, featuring University Distinguished Professor Tom Easern, singing and telling stories from the Salon on Willow Creek.
I need a bed for the night, boys, and my horses need hay. I've been riding that crow line on the hot dish highway. I am looking rather seedy now, while holding down my claim. My victuals are not always served the best, and the mice play shyly round me as I lay me down to sleep in my little old sod shanty in the west. Oh, the hinges are of leather, the windows have no glass, the roof it lets howling blizzard in. I hear the hungry coyote as he sneaks up through the grass, little old sod dugout on the claim. Well, welcome to birthday celebration tonight on this Willow Creek Folk School number 164. Back in the Salon on Willow Creek here in time to celebrate the birthday of, well, that's what we're calling it anyway, the Anthem of the Plains, Little Old Sod Shanty on the Claim, which originated as Little Old Sod Dugout on the Claim. There's quite a story on the evolution of this ballad. I have at least 50 or 60 texts. I believe there are hundreds out there that could be unearthed in the various newspapers, private manuscripts, and everywhere else. It is truly the Anthem of the Plains. No offense, more so than Home on the Range. This is the favorite of the Settler Society. It first appeared in public. Its debut was in the Smith County Pioneer of north central Kansas, 12th of March, 1881. Set of stanzas there. And I've told this story in print at this point in the journal South Dakota History. It's the story that begins with two homesteaders, both newspaper men, Billy Jenkins and Frank E. Jerome. There was, of course, a great efflorescence in newspapers in those days, and in that forum, this ballad composed about the homesteading experience of Jenkins and Jerome took off like wildfire. It was in scores of newspapers, and then after a year or so, it died down. Sort of went underground, disappeared. It probably was circulating informally still in Kansas, but it really took hold very soon after this in Dakota Territory, up and down the Jim River Valley, it seems. And it sort of morphs up there. It becomes less the story of a couple of guys batching together and their misadventures with cooking and that sort of stuff on the claim. And it focuses on a story that's more generalizable and maybe forward-looking. A man solitary on a claim, looking forward to the day his wife, girlfriend, or significant other of some kind would join him out there, and they'd start a true home. So it's a song that's aspirational in the end, and that's the way it reignites in 1883 after it comes back to Kansas, and then it actually goes coast to coast at that point. Well, I was singing a stanza that was a little bit cobbled together, but it had some of the original 1881 version, and I made the reference to the dugout and not to the shanty on the claim. The song goes everywhere. It localizes, and it gets appropriated. You know, imitation, they say, is the most sincere form of flattery. Now, one of the ironies here is all sorts of people tried to lay claim to Little Old Sod Shanty on the claim. Oh, I wrote it. I wrote it. No, I wrote it. Many claimants in Kansas, claimants in South Dakota, North Dakota, all over the place, Oklahoma. the irony is that the fellow who really did write it, Frank Jerome, he claimed that he was the author of John Brown's Body Lies a Mouldering in the Grave. I don't think so. No, as best I can tell from studying the records back in 1860 and 1861, I don't think he was. So that's the irony here. His song then gets appropriated and claimed by all these other people. Okay, one of my favorites. So I want to look at two of them. One of my favorites has to be a bachelor who came down, made the run into the Cheyenne and Arapaho lands in the Indian Territory, Oklahoma as we know it today, and took a homestead there. And eventually, then one night, this would be, when was this? His name is Dan Christ, by the way, homesteading bachelor, showed up one night at a literary, a country school literary social meeting in March 1893 in Kingfisher, Oklahoma. And he sang a ballad, which had a lot of resemblance to Little Old Sod Shanty on the Claim. And he said he wrote it. Now, I have a hunch that this is a bachelor homesteader trying to impress the schoolmarm. But he came in and he stood up and he delivered. And then the thing gets published in the Kansas Agitator across the line north there in March of 1893. So I've got his text. All right, this is kind of funny. His stanzas will not scan. So I don't know, did old Dan not really have a sense of poetic feet and stanzaic form? Or was somebody perhaps taking this song down with a pencil and paper while he was singing it and didn't get all the words? But all right, it is supposed to be a rendition of Little Old Sod Shanty on the Claim, but the stanzas don't work. But there's kind of interesting ones. My bed it is rough, and my biscuits are tough, but what do I care? For I'm going to stay here in my little box shanty on the Claim, and there's no more words to finish that verse. And now if some tender-hearted maid will pity on me take, and come my biscuits for to bake. The door is open wide, and I won't hide, and I need another line to finish that too, Dan. See, there's just stuff missing in there. But it's an interesting proposition down there in the Oklahoma Territory. So we have text all the way from Oklahoma to Alberta. All right. Now, here's the biggest thief of them all. This guy. Reverend Dr. Oliver Edwin Murray, who preempted a claim near Alexandria in Dakota Territory, became the first graduate of Dakota Wesleyan University at Mitchell. He was a popular poet, published in various newspapers and magazines, and he claimed he wrote Little Old Sod Shanty on the Claim. Now, we've got the goods. There's nothing to his claim, but he claimed that he did. If you look up the song, Little Old Sod Shanty on the Claim, in Wikipedia, it will say this is an American folk song written by Oliver Edwin Murray of South Dakota. Kids, this is why we don't cite Wikipedia in our papers, all right? Now, how does this happen? Well, if you study folk song long enough, you understand there are various ways that appropriations happen. Sometimes they're outright fraudulent, sometimes they're unconscious, sometimes they figure, well, nobody will know that I didn't write it. And sometimes I'm convinced that these folk adapters, in their hearts, believed that they wrote the song. They lived with it for a while, and people were asking them to, hey, sing your song, Dan. And after a while, they began to think they did. Well, at any rate. But you see, here's the deal. Reverend Murray's ballad is pretty darn good. Okay, so I'm going to wrap up this little disquisition for the birthday of Little Old Sod Shanty on the Claim with a couple verses of Reverend Murray's South Dakota, really Dakota Territory, stanzas. You may think about the little old log cabin in the lane, or little German homes across the sea, but my little old sod shanty that I build upon my claim has become the dearest spot on earth to me. I built it in my poverty upon my prairie claim, and after toil it gave me sweetest rest, safely sheltered from the blizzards and the storms that came in my little old sod shanty in the west. Oh, it makes a pleasant memory that I shall not forget. Of all our western homes, it suits me best. And often now I wish that I were living in it yet, in my little old sod shanty in the west. We had hungry wolves and coyotes for our nearest neighbors then. The buffalo and deer supplied our meat. And when the black and prowling bear would fall before our men, we would live like kings upon our game so sweet. The only town we knew for miles by prairie dogs was made. They yelped and sported round our little nest. And sometimes they took a tumble before the rifles raid. And such we thought was sport out in the west. Oh, it makes a pleasant memory that I shall not forget. All our western homes, it suits me best. Often now I wish that I were living in it yet, in my little old sod shanty in the west. Okay, one more stanza against my better judgment. Our path was full of troubles, nor were they little ones. For sure the pioneers were single boys. Then every man's own bodyguard was two good shooting guns, with ropes and lariats to use as toys. We sometimes hunted down the thief who stole from us a horse. A little necktie party did the rest. The morning sun shone grimly as its rays fell on the corpse near my little old sod shanty in the west. It makes a pleasant memory that I shall not forget. Of all our western homes, it suits me best. And often now I wish that I were living in it yet, in my little old sod shanty in the west. In our little old sod shanty in the west. That last stanza, just confessing up to lynching and pioneer times with no embarrassment. Well, Reverend, I guess that's your world and welcome to it. But in the middle of that, this lyric line, morbidly lyric line, the morning sun shone grimly as its rays fell on the corpse. Okay, it's a notable line at any rate. So much for little old sod shanty for tonight, Dr. Kelly. Have you been busy lately? I don't know. Yeah.
Did you say dizzy?
Dizzy? I know the answer to that one.
But I have been busy.
What you got?
Even for a spring break. I got to take some time to work on some of my own research and history collecting. I've had two 2-hour sessions with some people who were working in book distribution and book publication here on the Northern Plains in the 1970s and 80s. So it was great fun to sit with Joe and Mark and just talk about their experiences.
And they were gentlemen.
They certainly were.
Okay.
Of course. Yeah, so that was a really good timeout, sort of, even though I'm collecting information and hopefully have some good stories to put into the Institute for Regional Studies archives one of these days. But also just sent, before the show, a book fully designed and ready for printing. So it's off with the printer as of about 40 minutes ago. Yay! Shred, Being and Running. Shred, Running and Being by Kevin Carolla. It's kind of a philosophical look at running, writing, and being in COVID. That's a big part of it. Also, his partner's mom had Alzheimer's, and so it was a story with that caregiving that they did in her final days.
Pretty good memoir, isn't it?
It's great. It really is good. And he was going to be at our press party on April 13th, but he'll be running the Boston Marathon, I think, for the 9th time that day. So we're saving his reading until next year, when maybe our session won't coincide with the Boston Marathon again. He's been running since he was 12.
I have one more question.
Yes?
How much sleep did you get last night, Dr. Kelly?
Last night, I got maybe about 30 minutes. But boy, did I get a lot of stuff done. I'll sleep more tonight.
Can you stay awake long enough to help me through this next ballad?
I think I can.
Oh, this is one of those cases where Dr. Kelly's up late in the middle of the night. This was some days ago, or like last week. Then she gets up in the morning. You'll never believe what I just found. 5 o'clock this morning. Well, and here's what it was. It was another authentic ballad from the open range of Montana in the 1880s. You know, the true heyday of the cattle kingdom. And this one was discovered it in the Roundup, Montana Record Tribune in 1935. So it was published many years after it was written in the 1880s. Just when in the 1880s, probably would be able to pin that down, but I haven't yet. We don't have it directly from its author being a fellow named Francis D. Poole. Poole was the manager of, I wrote that down, maybe I'll just look.
How handy to have your journal.
What was that? What's that? Oh, yeah, the Bogue and Gilbert Cattle Company. And they operated on Deer Creek up to the headwaters of the Redwater, a tributary of the Missouri. So in between the Yellowstone and the Missouri, say northwest of Glendive, Montana. This is a cattle company headquartered out of Chicago, but they had a resident manager, Francis D. Poole, who is there, and he appears for a while, and then he just disappears from the area. Probably after the collapse of many of the open range outfits in the late 1880s, and he's gone. A brand notice in the Roundup paper said, "Range on Deer Creek and its branches to Redwater Divide." The brand, as depicted in the graphics on that announcement, was a TV, not a television set. The letters TV. What that stands for, I don't know. But that was the brand of the Bogue and Gilbert Cattle Company. That brand applied to the side of the animal, not to the rear haunch. And he wrote this ballad, which he entitled Song of the Lower Yellowstone Roundup. This is the Lower Yellowstone Cattlemen's Association, one of those extra-legal organizations for organizing the open range. We get this ballad, a character named Montana Lou, operated out of Miles City and wrote for a lot of newspapers in eastern Montana. And Montana Lou Grill. Now, Montana Lou had a fuller text. This ballad had to have been 20 stanzas or more about a particular real roundup. But he didn't publish all of them in 35. They might appear in some newspaper that's now lost, or maybe it hasn't been digitized. We'll find this one of these days. It'll surface like a rock one of these days, I think. But right now we have the account about the ballad published in 1935 by Montana Lou Grill. Now, he kind of summarizes the action of the ballad, and then he gives a stanza and summarizes and gives a stanza. Dr. Kelly has volunteered to be Montana Lou and read his narrative, in between snatches of which I will sing the stanzas that were put in there. One more thing, the tune will be familiar. This fellow was Yankee, must have been, although there were many Democrats and Southerners in Montana at the time. But he set this thing to the tune of Marching Through Georgia. So that's a tip-off of his origins. Are you ready, Dr. K?
I am ready. Okay. Lights and shadows are thrown on the ranges of eastern Montana through the medium of rhyme, written by cowboys during their leisure moments. Usually, the thread of thought runs into channels of pathos, but more frequently into the avenues of passion, or the melodramatic expressions of the lonesome range rider. There has been preserved, however, a Roundup Song, written by Francis D. Poole, who in the middle and late 80s was foreman for Bogue and Gilbert's outfit on the Redwater. Written to the tune of Marching Through Georgia, the production is entitled Song of the Lower Yellowstone Roundup. The first stanza provides the setting.
Well, listen to me, friend, and I will sing to you a song. Life among the cowboys and how they get along, rounding up and cutting out the cattle on the range. 'Tis a busy life they lead upon the roundup. It's a long and weary one, the roundup has to ride from Beaufort to Miles City and farther up a side. Through the creeks and coulees and over the buttes they go, looking for the stock on the roundup.
The chorus calls for the cowboys to roll out as it is their turn to watch. The location of the cattle is given. They are nicely bedded, no trouble in pens in your lonely watch tonight upon the roundup. The start was made from Fort Buford on May 21 and finished June 20. Through rain and sunny weather, no difference did it make. We got there just the same on the roundup. Reference is then made to the cook, who is up and at his work before dawn, with the meat frying and the potatoes on the way. What the cook set up was not for display, but the food met with approval of the cowboys.
Come a-runnin', says the cook, and to the grub we fly, with biscuits few and a prune or two, and now and then a pie. But they are very scarce, and don't forget it now, my boy, for they killed a man who called for pie on the roundup.
The wrangler runs the horses in, and each man with a lasso in hand ropes out his pony. With the bronc bridled and saddled, the work of the day begins. The riders are off before 4 o'clock in the morning, ranging the creeks and driving in the stock. The cutting out then begins.
We'll cut out the O-U-N-D bar, also the diamond L. Leave the circle in the DT and H3 as well, together with the WK and NY for a spell, to drive along in a cabbie on the roundup.
The boys are busy. Soon the cutting out is done. The calves are driven in the pen when the branding begins with a healer and 2 wrestlers and a man to use the irons. When dinner is over, the horses are changed. Camp is broken, the cavvy is rounded in and started on its way on the trail. When camp is pitched for the night, the cattle are bedded down. The first relief goes on watch. Those not engaged for the night make their beds on the ground and are soon asleep. Storm clouds pile mountain high in the sky. The mutterings of thunder are heard as the lightning flashes. Dashing rain comes to announce the storm is on the roundup. The clatter of horses' hoofs are heard rushing by in the storm. It's the first relief coming in to give the alarm.
Oh boys, roll out, it's all your turn tonight. It's raining like damnation and the cattle's in a fry. And mount your brocks and get there, for you can't be any too quick, for the cattle are stampeding on the roundup. Now we have to mind this messenger who banishes our sleep, and we spring from out our blankets into mud 6 inches deep. While the lightnings flash, it blinds us, and a muttered curse we hear from some boys who's lost his boots on the roundup.
The mounted range riders speed out into the murky night. They ride after the cattle, dashing over the boulders and through the gulches. He is a lucky cowboy who saves his neck on such a hazardous trip. The riding is soon over. The cattle have been driven into a coulee. They simply became frightened at the flashes of lightning, raised their tails, and left for home on the roundup. It was not all work on the roundup. Fun was sometimes enjoyed in riding bucking broncos and trying their speed. Perhaps a quiet game of poker was enjoyed, or a Monte when the boys needed a little cash. A tenderfoot sometimes gave the camp a call, but his assuring manner that he knew it all was answered by the old familiar adage that pride must come before the fall, and which was demonstrated on the roundup. Bronc riding for the tenderfoot was the medicine applied. The pony called Dynamite was roped. Instructions were given to the visitor that when he got aboard, you want to hug him tight. The eastern man is mounted. The boys could hear his spinal column crack.
And soon the tragic deed is done on this eventful day, for Dynamite gets in his work in his peculiar way. The boys, they laughingly they remark, as on the ground they lay, oh, he's a tenderfoot on the roundup.
The turn for the third relief has come. No trouble is anticipated. The cattle are nicely bedded, and no trouble you will find in your lonely watch tonight upon the roundup. The poet refers to Day and his outfit. With their beeves and Texas heifers, they give the boys plenty of work to do. Jesse Reeves and Henderson and all the Texas boys are the boss upon the roundup. Charlie Anderson and Charlie Parker show up at the start and always ride it through. And Baker, Gray, and Ammon, and 100 more who always do their duty on the roundup. The cattle are in the coulee to the right. Tex is informed to keep his mind on them. The cattle are uneasy because there's a fight going on between two lovers on the roundup. The pathos appears in the last two stanzas. The first suggests the origin of the last roundup, a melody, the singing of which became popular during the last year.
But there is a time a-comin' when your last roundup you'll ride, when you'll find yourself drifting over on the shiftless tide, when the great high boss will call you and the maverick book will show the number of strays you branded on the roundup.
The poem would not be complete without the last reference to a personal need.
Now my little song has ended, and I hope I pleased you well. I feel peculiar, so be careful what you call. I'll take it mixed, I'll take it straight, or any old way at all. It's good enough for boys upon the roundup.
Mr. Poole had the reputation of being one of the best cowmen in the territory. After reading his lengthy poem, one comment had it that he has missed his vocation in life. Among his other accomplishments, Mr. Poole was a musician of no mean order. His rendition of his Roundup Song to the accompaniment of an organ is still remembered by many of the early day residents of eastern Montana.
Thank you, Montana Lou, Dr. K.
You're welcome.
While you get resituated. Oh, boys, roll out. It's all your turn tonight. It's raining like damnation and the cattle's in a fright. Come mount your broncs and get there, for you can't be any too quick, for the cattle are stampeding on the roundup. Well, that's kind of our discovery of the week there. That set of stanzas from the Yellowstone in the 1880s. Got any friends with us on the chat line tonight, Dr. K?
We do. I see Rachel Coyne popping in here.
Oh, yeah?
So I asked if she was going to be painting, quilting, or writing. Well, she's going to be writing.
I think she's got some writing deadlines, hasn't she?
Well, I don't know, but she's always got something in the works.
Yeah. And always great fun.
Oh, and you were talking about birthdays today.
Yeah, yeah.
And we want to send out a birthday to Ocean Clark,
Ocean Clark.
who is 12 years old.
No, she isn't. It can't possibly be. All right.
Yeah.
Well, to kind of round out the program, I wanted to get an old favorite in here, yeah. all these songs are illustrating kind of a theme for the evening I'm calling loose ends and red herrings. They all have to do with kind of mysterious origins and appropriations and funny business about the origin and ownership of ballads and the difficulties of untangling these relationships. Many of them can pin down, but some, who knows? Will we ever find the author of the song of the Lower Yellowstone Roundup? Will we ever find out what happened to him? Will we ever find the rest of the ballad? Well, I don't know. There's always going to be a lot of missing pieces, and that just makes it the better. Hey, check back in a year. Maybe we'll have some of them found. An old favorite, the Dying Hobo. Now, this one had mysterious origins for quite a while. It turns up in the prairies in the late 1890s and circulates pretty heavily like in the first decade and a half of the 20th century. It's popping up here, popping up there. And it always shows up as some sort of dubious story of accidental provenance, like a set of stanzas written down and left behind in a jail cell, perhaps, or scratched into the wall of a boxcar or something like that. They all just have the air of some stringer putting something over on the wire services. Now, as best I can tell, and tracked it down to something very close to origins, this song originates in the early 1890s in California. But you know, it rode the rail. It's a hobo song. It rode the rails east, and then it percolates all over the prairies over the next decade and a half. Now, hence, given the way that it appeared and was discovered and rediscovered on the prairies here, I'm going to sing a text tonight I got from the Fargo Forum of 1910, in which the Forum attributed the song to an Italian hobo who was in the penitentiary in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. Okay, that's one of those odd stories. All the versions that you find, though, that come back from that, whatever bogus provenance is given by a reporter or informant, they all go back to the poem, mid-19th century, by Carolyn Norton, the English poet, called Bingen on the Rhine. A soldier of the Legion lay dying in Algiers. There was lack of woman's comfort. There was dearth of woman's tears. And the last cowboy, or the last longhorn, the last this, the dying hope, all these songs, they come from Carolyn Norton's poem. Wow, the Dying Hobo. Oh, and another reason for singing it, I just really like this song. Beside a western water tank, one cold November day, inside an empty boxcar, a dying hobo lay. His partner stood beside him, Willow and drooping head, listening to the last words that the dying hobo said. I'm going to a better land, where everything is bright, where the handouts grow on bushes and you sleep out every night, where you don't have to work at all or even change your socks, and little streams of whiskey come a-trickling down the rocks. Tell my sweetheart back in Denver that no more her face I'll view. Tell her I've jumped a fast freight and that I'm going right through. Tell her not to weep for me, no tears in her eyes must lurk, for I'm going to a land where I won't have to work. I'm going to a better land where every sleep out every night, where you don't have to work at all or even change your socks, and little streams of whiskey come a-trickling down the rocks. Oh, hark, I hear her whistling. I must catch her on the fly. Farewell, partner, I must leave you. Hell, it ain't so hard to die. The hobo stopped, his head fell back. He'd sung his last refrain. His partner swiped his hat and shoes and jumped the eastbound train. I'm going to a better land, where everything is bright, where the hen-downs grow on bushes and you sleep out every night, where you won't have to work at all or even change your socks, and little streams of whiskey come trickling down the rocks. Yes, little streams of whiskey come a-trickling down the rock. Ooh, if that isn't Luther in heaven, I don't know what is, Dr. K.
I think you like the part about not having to change your socks.
You know, I do change socks once a week at least. Well, let's see. Oh yeah, we have a calendar ballad, and it's kind of friends to indulge me with occasional original composition, but it's always kind of hinging either on what's going on around us here, maybe what's passed through our yard coming up Willow Creek or down Willow Creek here, maybe what's happening around the region, maybe the high school football playoffs, maybe some reflections on the ballads I've been working with. Maybe influenced even, it's kind of a literary household here, folks. It's kind of full of words. Mm-hmm. And it might be influenced by some of the words that have been crossing our desks over the week. Particularly, past week or so, that biography of Larry McMurtry I've been reading. It finished up yesterday, you remember. And I was reminded from that of a quote which McMurtry puts into the mouth of Augustus McCrae in Lonesome Dove, when he says, "The older the fiddle, the sweeter the music." It occurred to me again last night during the State of the Union address. And consequently, about 4 o'clock this afternoon, finished up this calendar ballad called "The Older the Fiddle, the Sweeter the Music." It reaches back to last week's folk school with a couple of references to other ballads and that sort of stuff. I don't think it's too murky. Sometimes I think about old Jess Willard. Goodbye, old paint, a panhandle dance. Did he know that his ballad was older than Texas? Had he any idea? I would say not a chance. We know a song as a cowboy ballad. Bury me not on the lone prairie. Have we forgotten its briny lineage? Bury me not in the deep, deep sea. Now the older the fiddle, the sweeter the music. deep lineage, long tradition, old dogs, old horses, and old friends, sailing ships in epic saga, long, long trail that never ends. Proper vintage, oak-aged whiskey, family farm that stands the test, family Bible with generations. These are the things we love the best. For the older the fiddle, sweeter the music, older and sweeter the song, older and sweeter the song. Where the deer, the antelope play. Now you may sing about that little old sod shanty on the claim, with the little German homes across the sea. But my little old sod shanty that I built upon my claim become the dearest spot on earth to me. I come a-running, says the cook, and to the grub we fly, with the biscuits few and a prune or two, now and then a pie. But they're very scarce, don't forget it now, my boy. Killed a man who asked for pie on the Roundup. Tell my sweetheart back in Denver that I'll know won't face her view. Tell her I've jumped a fast freight and I'm going through. Tell her not to weep for me, but tears in her eyes must flow. I am going to land, I'm going to land where I don't have to worry. Where seldom is the bird, oh, discouraging wood, and the sky all the day. Now the older the fiddle, sweeter the music. The older the fiddle, sweeter the music. The older the fiddle, sweeter the music. Dr. K.
We now conclude today's edition of the Folk School on Willow Creek. We invite you to join us again next Friday at 8 p.m. Central Time for more songs and stories.